Hello and welcome to this short video in which I discuss the subject performance report and show you my preferred method for analyzing the information. To download this report, you will need the system report role and the data extract role assigned to your account, and I'll be using pivot tables. However, you don't have to. You can also use the filter and sort functions if you want to. I will be downloading the report from the Eastern Cape, Maluti district, but you can choose any district you want. To find the report, select the Reports tab and scroll down to the Learner Achievement section, and that's where you'll find the Subject Performance Report. One of the nice things about this report is that you can download it at a district level, giving you quite a lot of information down to a school level. So select the report. We'll be using the FET phase, so you can only select one phase at a time, and we will be using exam test marks, but you can also use report marks if you want, and then click apply. When the report loads, you will land on a sort of summary sheet from grade 10 to 12, which is the FET phase, and you'll see some promotion statistics and total number of enrolled students per school for the different hierarchy within that district. This sheet isn't populated yet, but it will be in the future. So let's say we want to look at the grade 12 grade. So we select the subject performance sheet for grade 12, and what we see there is we have the normal hierarchy breakdown all the way to a school level, which is quite cool. We've got the EMIS number, so we don't have to use the name of the school to track the school. Obviously for the grade, they're all grade 12s. And then we have the subjects. So for every single school, we have data on each of the subjects being taken in that school. We then have some task coverage information. So if I zoom in, so per term, we will find the task coverage these schools are achieving in each of their subjects, and then we have the term 1 and term 2 subject performance outcomes. We have the number of learners enrolled compared to the number of learners who wrote, and remember this is at a per school per subject for grade 12 level. And then we have the number of learners achieving results, and again the exam test results per level. From that we also get a pass percentage. So in this case 100% of learners are achieving a level 2 or higher mark, so therefore the pass rate for this school in this subject is 100%. And we also have the average mark achieved. So the average mark achieved by these 14 learners who wrote is 59%. We have that for term 1 and for term 2, and as more data gets submitted to the dashboard, this report will update itself to include term 3 and term 4. So at the end of the year, you can download this report and analyze a subject for a grade across all schools in a given district for each term, which is quite powerful. The report doesn't go down to a per learner level, but you can get that data in a different report. So in this video, we're just looking at the at the school level. So let me show you how I prefer to use this report in analyzing data. It's not set up in a friendly way for pivot tables, so we first need to sort of edit the table before we can use a pivot table. So what I like to do is I like to label the pass rate and the average rate, because I want to compare term 1 results to term 2 results. So the first thing I do is I remove the columns that I do not need. So I'll select the entire column K all the way up to the pass average, and I'll right click there and press delete. So then I remove those columns, and then I'll do the same for term 2. So I remove all the data I don't want to use. Perhaps you want to do it. You want to sort of analyze levels. but I would like to compare the pass rates, the term 1 pass rates to term 2 pass rates. Now notice I've removed sort of headings, so I need to relabel these so that I know what I'm dealing with. So we'll call this term 1 pass percentage. We'll call this one term 1 average percent, and then I'll label this term 2, and I'll label that term 2 as well. So now I know what each column represents. I have the subject, I have the school, and I have the grade. So now I'm ready to put this information into a pivot table. In order for a pivot table to work, each heading has to be different and populated. So if I select this first row, these are my headings for the pivot table, and then I need to select all the data below that. If you want, you can remove all of this unnecessary sort of space or data above the headings. It's not necessary, but just be cautious when you select the data for your pivot table that you only include the headings in the first line. And then we can go down and select all of the data. A quick way to do this is to select some data on the top of the table and then scroll all the way down to the bottom, and while holding down the Shift key, select the last piece of information. So now I have selected the entire table, and my first row contains my headings, and each heading has a heading, so each column has a heading name. I'll then go Insert over at the top and then select Pivot Table. You can ignore all of that and just press OK. It will then set up a pivot table in a new sheet. If you want, you can rename this and call it Pivot 1, for instance, or Pivot Grade 12. And now we can start populating the pivot table with our different headings. So what I want to do is I want to compare pass rates for a particular subject across circuits in this district. Now I can go to my original data and use averages and totals for each circuit, but it would take quite a while because there are quite a few different circuits within this district, and there are a lot of schools. So if I go back to my pivot, let me think about what I want on the y-axis and the x-axis of my table. So on the vertical part of my table, so this portion here, I'd like the circuit names. So if I go and I click and I drag the circuit into rows, I then have my circuit names on the left hand side. I then want the data or the values to be the pass rates per term. So if I scroll down here, I see that I have my term 1 pass rate and my term 2 pass rate over there. So it was quite important to rename those two columns. So if I drag term 1 pass rates there, you'll see that it automatically populates the data for each circuit. And what you'll notice is it says count of term 1 pass rate. So it's actually not giving me the average pass rate. What it's giving me is the number of data fields. So it's saying there are 46 schools in this circuit that have data for pass rate. And what I want is the average pass rate. I don't want the total or the count, I want the average. So if I right click there and I go to summarize values by, I don't want the sum, I don't want the count, I don't want the maximum or the minimum, but you could do that. What I want is the average. And so now it's calculated the average pass rate for each circuit in term 1. But I want to compare it to term 2. So I need to include the term 2 pass rate as well. So I drag it down to the values section. And again, I need to change this to the average. So you can right click on the column and go summarize values by, or you can right click on the field in the pivot table and go select value fields and change it there. So there's always a multiple ways of changing the data. I also don't want all of these decimals, so I'm going to select the data and then press this button over here to remove the decimals to 1 decimal, and that gives me a neater sort of table. So great, now I can compare the term 1 average pass rate for, let's say, Lesedi to the term 2 pass rate, and we see that the pass rate has come down slightly from 66% to 63.7%. And that is expected because we often find the pass rates and even the average marks, which we can find out using the same pivot table, are generally lower in term 2 than term 1. What we haven't done yet is select a subject. So right now we have pass rates for all, or the average pass rate per circuit for all of the subjects. And what I would like to do is choose a particular subject, let's say accounting or mathematics. So we do have a field for subject here, and if we go back to our sort of source data and we go to the top, we can see that under the subject column we have the subject information. So if we go back to our pivot and we want to select subject here, we want to include the subject information, I could drag it into either the columns or the rows, but there are a lot of subjects. So if I quickly do it into the rows, you'll see that there's, if we look at this, there are 15 subjects for that particular circuit, and there's probably more or less the same for each of the other circuits. And this becomes a bit messy, but what if we wanted to just compare accounting across the different circuits? So instead of putting the subject in the rows field, we can move it into the filters field. So immediately all the subjects are removed from the pivot table, and they're put and a sort of filter is put up at the automatically in the top of the page. If I press the down arrow, and this works similar to the filters option, I unselect all of them, and let's say I just select accounting and press OK. So now we have the average pass rates for term 1 compared to term 2 just for accounting in this particular district across the circuits, just for grade 12s. So if you do draw a graph from this, remember to label it correctly. So what's quite cool about pivot tables is we can insert a graph pretty quickly like that, and immediately we already have a graph that we can start working with. Let's say we want to sort of rank the information, so let's rank these stats so we can sort them from highest to lowest for term 2 marks. We just right click on any of the data, and we go sort largest to smallest, and we'll see that the red is the term 2 and the blue is the term 1. What you can already see are the large differences in the pass rates for accounting across these circuits. What we can do is add some data labels like that. Perhaps we see it's a bit messy. We can remove some decimals, and then we can already start comparing. So for some circuits the pass rates have increased significantly, and for others the pass rates have decreased significantly. What's really cool about pivot tables is if now you wanted to just choose a different subject, you can go to your filter, unselect accounting, and scroll down to perhaps mathematics, and all of the information will automatically update itself. And then again you can compare the different statistics by circuit.